something that is a long-term goal, but that also has a vehicle right now in our session, is addressing the dominance of sexism and patriarchal ideology across government. So we introduced a bill that is moving that would require anti-sexism and implicit bias training, a program in government. And I don't think that anything like that exists in the US right now, but it's something that we wanted to do to address like the culture, the colonial mindset that shapes policymaking, because every year, right, we go up against basically like the climate change deniers of women's oppression. They don't believe there's a gender wage gap. They don't believe women, need greater access to abortion. They blame women for prostitution, just down the line. And so if we don't actually attack the ideology, then we will continue to, run into roadblocks just in terms of the culture. So that's one aspect of long-term change.
So, because you're from Hawaii, and any opportunity, that there is for someone to talk about colonial mindset, I want to welcome, because, it's, especially if people aren't conscious of it. I mean, I know it's a big subject, but could you elaborate a little bit on when you mentioned colonial mindset on the island in particular, as opposed to like other places around the world? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of gender, it's different in Hawaii because Hawaii was colonized very recently. And so there is this sense and awareness that the current economy is a construct that happened through a colonial process and a historical process. And, the mentality that, around acceptance of hierarchies that were put in place artificially is really what I mean by that colonial mindset. And for us, it's really about looking to history, organizing with women who are leading the anti-colonial movement here to make sure that we are carrying that burden in government. So I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Well, so you're saying like they set up, okay, so when did Hawaii become, are you saying it became a colony when it became a state, or when it was first occupied by, Westerners?
Well, I don't know if I should or can answer that question, but the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom was in 1893, and it's tied closely with the histories of the Philippines, Guahan, Puerto Rico, and so we've had a parallel struggle with those island nations. And so, there is and at that time, it was a woman in leadership, which played a big role, right? Like overthrowing a white supremacist coup, overthrowing a powerful woman of color, a Native woman. And that is something that is in the collective memory and guides the movement here. So it is something that we centered in our plan, is returning to that mutuality of relationship and stewardship of land and connection to people in terms of the approach to governance. And that was really important for the plan.
And after the overthrow of the kingdom, and obviously once Hawaii became a state, can you talk about like what were the interests on the island? Like what were the goals of the conquering of the island? I mean, what in Puerto Rico there were geopolitical reasons. Same thing with the Philippines, and but can you explain a little bit more about Hawaii's the intentions there?
On the surface, it was always pitched as altruistic and purely just geopolitical in terms of like a coaling station to stop over to help with the war in the Philippines. But ultimately it's economic, right? So the ability to seize land and to commodify land and to set up these plantation economies. I mean, it was literally some of the same white men who obstructed land distribution in Hawaii and in the Philippines, and went over to the Philippines and bought up plantations, haciendas, and turned them into plantations, literally the same men. And so it was primarily economic.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.